What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of At a Glance, a series in which I give you an appetizer, sample, or glimpse into a particular faction in 40k. And the goal behind it is to help you decide if you want to look further into that force on your own, or maybe even start collecting that force. So, with that said, up on the chopping block by viewer request is the Flesh Terror Space Marines. It looks like there was an early request for these guys, but when I went to the video that it's supposed to be on, there is no request for them there, but they were requested again. I don't know if there was a glitch with YouTube. I didn't see the email notification about that comment being left until recently anyway, so that's my bad, but they were requested again. So what we have is a Loyalist Space Marine chapter that is a second founding successor to the Blood Angels, the Flesh Terrors. And they got their name from their first chapter master, because that was his nickname, the Flesh Terror. So it tells you a lot about kind of this chapter's history. So being second founding, they had a long history, obviously. And what's pretty cool is that this is a successor chapter with a lot of background information. A pretty good following for it, from GW, from Black Library, and all that. So that's pretty cool. Now, the Flesh Terrors are a second founding successor, like I mentioned multiple times. And throughout their history, it's been one of brutal violence, aggressive tactics, being a weapon of war essentially and nothing else. And through it has basically been a souring of their reputation with other Imperial forces, because over time their GC destabilized quite a bit. It's still usable and useful for them, but it's destabilized, it's degenerated is a better way of putting it over the years, more so than other Blood Angel successors, GCs, which have undergone the same thing. And in the Blood Angels fluff for the Gene Seed period, all chapters utilizing Blood Angels Gene Seed have noticed a drastic kind of increase in the number of Black Rage victims, essentially, amongst their chapters. And with the Flesh Terrors, they already had a high amount of that. It seems to affect that chapter a lot. That didn't help. You have their aggressive tactics, you have the curse really taking root in the Flesh Terrors, and what you have is a chapter that's slowly dwindling down. In fact, losses taken for their aggressive tactics and losses to the Black Rage essentially has made this chapter unable to sustain its numbers. And the number of recruits that they get and train up and survive the training and everything does not make up for the number of losses they take, so they're slowly dwindling down. And at the moment, in the fluff, they're around 400 Space Marine strong, and that's it. So their existence is in jeopardy, their future is uncertain. They could be a chapter doomed to die off and go extinct. It's not really officially known if that's going to be the case, but it definitely seems to be kind of the, at least, suggestion based on the fluff and everything. And because of the rage in the Flesh Terrors and the red thirst really taking root in them as well, and their aggressive tactics, they have occasionally kind of sort of butchered their allies. Sisters of Battle, I believe, were butchered by them, Imperial Guard, of course, and that does not sit well with the Imperium. It's led to bad reputations with the Flesh Terrors amongst other Imperial forces. They had a soured relationship with the Blood Angel successors and the Blood Angels themselves, and the Inquisition even looked into them for charges of heresy because of stuff like this. Nothing came of those charges. The investigation did not bring anything up, but an investigation happened, and that also did not help the Blood Angels Gene Seed at large, because now the inquisitorial eye was turned upon, well, a chapter of their Gene Seed, and that's not good for all the chapters of the Blood Angels Gene Seed. So not much was going right for the Flesh Terrors in that regard. They were a loyal force, and still are a loyal force, but their tactics were really pushing them down that path of potential renegade status. And that's where you could say Gabriel Seth steps in. And Gabriel Seth is the current chapter master of the Flesh Terrors, and when he took over control of the Flesh Terrors chapter, he vowed essentially to restore their honor, essentially. I said essentially twice there. Basically, he vowed to restore their honor. He wants to save the chapter completely from extinction, but if that's not possible, he wants to at least have their tale be overall a positive one, not one of woe and gloom. So he's restored a working relationship with the Blood Angels chapter, and he's working to get the Imperium at large to kind of view the Flesh Tearers as saviors and not as something to dread coming towards your system. So, with that, the Flesh Tearers have been active like never before, and they do a lot of preemptive attacks against the enemy. Plus, if they're working alongside other Imperial forces, they'll segregate themselves and isolate themselves while fighting, so they don't butcher their allies, essentially, and they can go full force and not really worry about holding back. It doesn't always work that way. They can't always be on their own, and there have been situations that have happened even with Gabriel Seth trying to redeem the chapter in that regard, but you can say the situation is improving with the Flesh Tearers and the Imperium in terms of viewing the Flesh Tearers and everything like that. So it is kind of working, although there's a lot of big-time detractors to the Flesh Tearers that aren't going to be swayed so easily. But having a working relationship with the Blood Angels is a pretty big step for the Flesh Tearers again. So you can say progress is being made. But how much time the Flesh Tearers have is unknown. We do know with their dwindling numbers and their highly active status that it's not going to bode well for numbers of the chapter at all. And unless something can be found and done about their gene curse, and if they can figure out a way to build up their recruit numbers to a point where they actually are gaining Astartes and not slowly losing them, then they'll be saved. But if that doesn't happen, Gabriel Seth at the very least wants to have that chapter leave a positive, you can say, legacy. So that's kind of the Flesh Tearers shtick as it is. They are a highly aggressive chapter, and what I really like about them is they don't try to view themselves as anything more than a weapon. You have different Astartes chapters that have a different viewpoint of themselves and try to pursue certain things like artifice or become a paragon or being warrior kings or whatever the case may be. The Flesh Tearers keep it brutally simple. We're a weapon for the Emperor. Unleash us upon the Emperor's foes and get out of our way, essentially. Like, just let us loose upon the enemies of the Emperor, and that's all we do. And it's very brutal and simple, but very effective, and I like that. It's kind of refreshing. So that's what we have for the Flesh Tearers. Now, in terms of their color scheme, the Flesh Tearers color scheme I like. Originally, they were pure black with yellow studs and a yellow helmet stripe. Back in, like, you could say, the Rogue Trader days. So that hasn't been like that for a while, however, and their color scheme is black chest emblem, black helmet, black backpack, black shoulder pads, and the rest of the armor is red. And it's kind of more of a purplish tinge to that red. When you look at it amongst the other red hued successors of the Blood Angels and the Blood Angels themselves, the Flesh Tearers red definitely stands out. So I really like their red, to be honest, and I think that it's nice that it stands out. It works well for them, and what's really cool is that their vehicles are more black than red. So it's kind of the opposite of their powered armor, the Terminator armor, and their dreadnoughts, which are more red than black. So it's a very visually striking force in that regard. Their Death Company, color scheme wise, is the same as the Blood Angels Death Company. There's only one or two chapters that have a different look to the Death Company, and that is not the Flesh Tearers. So you can paint them up just like normal, the whole black armor and everything like that. Sanguinary Guard, I haven't read enough of the Flesh Tearer stuff to say if they make mention, if they have any at all. So there's nothing that I found in the Codex, for example, that states they don't. At least that I remember reading. So I say up to player discretion. Do you want Sanguinary Guard in your force? Do you not want it? Do you feel that their fluff would lead to them not having any left due to their dwindling numbers and their aggressive tactics? Or do you think that Gabriel Seth would still keep some Sanguinary Guard, keeping in mind he has no jump back and stuff like that? So it's up to the player, I think, at that point. But cool color scheme. They make use of blood drops. Their squad markings are in white, and their chapter symbol is predominantly white and will be the only kind of hiccup. They do make sculpted shoulder pads for them, but those sculpted shoulder pads are not as wide as the current plastic shoulder pads, so it will look different and look kind of off a little bit when you look at the Space Marine with the sculpted shoulder pad and then a plastic shoulder pad. So it's up to you if you like that or not. And if not, then that's going to be the only hiccup for collecting the flesh tearers, is getting a way to represent their chapter symbol on them. But that aside, everything else is pretty easy. So with that said, the codex obviously is going to be the Blood Angels codex to use them. Gabriel Seth is a Lord of War in that codex, which is also pretty cool, because we don't really see special characters for successor chapters outside of the Space Marine codex. So the fact that the Blood Angels codex has Gabriel Seth in it, I think is pretty cool. It's something I hoped would happen for the Dark Angels. Maybe one of their successors would get a special character, but that didn't happen. So it's pretty unique for Gabriel Seth to be a special character. Now, Seth is a Lord of War, so you're going to need a regular HQ anyway. The detachment for a Battleforge list that's in the Blood Angels Codex will work just fine for you. You don't need to have Gabriel Seth in your force, but at the same time, due to the dwindling numbers and whatnot, if you're looking for an excuse or a fluff reason that he would be there, there it is. The chapter's numbers aren't as big as they should be. They're only 4 companies strong essentially at the moment. Gabriel Seth has a very good chance of being a lot of the battles that happen. So there's your fluff reason if you're looking for one. So that aside from secondary guard opinion wise, you have access to the entire codex, no problem. So that's always good, and it makes sense because they're a successor mentioned in that codex. So with that said, collecting them, obviously any generic Space Marine bits and kits from GW and Forge World will be very useful for you. It'll be interesting to see if anything kind of Flesh Terror-y pops up from Forge World when they finally get to the Blood Angels Horus Heresy stuff. But that aside, the Blood Angels Tactical Squad and the Blood Angels Terminator Squad kit can be very useful for you as a Flesh Terror. Now obviously the Blood Angels upgrade sprue won't be very useful because that's very distinctly Blood Angel. But the Tactical Squad and the Terminator Squad for the Blood Angels can work for the Flesh Terrors. The chalice symbolism, or symbols, you could say, the blood drops that's utilized, all that can work for a Flesh Terror. Obviously, a blatant Blood Angels iconography of the winged blood drop is not going to be very useful. But the one wing on a blood drop can still be used and everything. So there's a lot of really cool bits in there that can help your Flesh Terrors force stand out a little, and I see no reason why you couldn't use those kits. Obviously any blatant Blood Angel symbol stuff don't use, but everything else I think will be very useful for your Flesh Terrors force. And other than that, that's basically it for the Flesh Terrors. I like them. They're a highly aggressive, brutal chapter. They have this simple outlook that we are warriors and weapons and nothing more, and that's how we will be doing our shtick, essentially. We are going to be weapons for the Emperor and nothing more. And maybe their fluff will be continued and pushed on to see if they are ultimately going to be able to bring their numbers back up, or if they're going to become an extinct chapter. We don't really have that. It's kind of up in the air at the moment. But anyways, that's the Flesh Terrors, a unique situation in which a successor chapter has a lot written for them in terms of novels and campaign book stuff and everything like that. So thanks for sticking through it. Hope you've enjoyed. That was the Flesh Terrors Space Marine chapter. If you have any questions, comments, or requests, feel free to leave it in the comment section. I get to them in a first come, first served basis. So that's it. And until next time, take it easy.